But I want to talk about what we call white roofs or cool roofs. And the idea is that if you paint your roof white, it can help you enormously in reducing overall emissions. So let me begin by first telling you a little bit about what we have been doing in California. I work at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab in California, which is part of the University of California. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time. Good, this works. So about 2 years ago, we started a program jointly with the many different topics, and I've listed a few of them that we are going to talk about here today. And these deal with the creation of the Joint Clean Energy Research and Development Center that will be done jointly by the two countries. They're going to focus on building efficiency, solar energy, and advanced biofuels, but also work at a level between utility companies or between regulators. So not only at the national scale, but working at a state level, as well as private partnerships. And finally, about cool roofs. And this is an area where we have done experiments in India as well as in the US for the last 15 years or so. And the yields are quite phenomenal. Just a little bit of background information about India. So most of the energy use in India comes from coal. There's a large proportion of biomass use, and this has continued for decades now. There's some amount of oil use, and then you can see the fact that there have been electricity shortages in India for a very long time. It goes back several decades now, and this has continued. And as long as the electricity shortages persist, it makes it very difficult then to pursue efficiency in order to reduce emissions. Because if you pursue efficiency, it's going to reduce the energy demand, electricity demand, but that additional power not being there, it doesn't help us in reducing emissions over the long term. If you increase efficiency, more electricity will be saved. That electricity will be available for people who don't have access or don't have the electricity available to them. And if you manage to do that, then the businesses will get more electricity than what they were doing before. If the businesses get more electricity, they can increase their output. And what our analysis has shown is that over a period of about 8 to 9 years, it will add up to about $500 billion. It's not a small number. It's a very significant number, and therefore pursuing energy efficiency is a very key feature in the Indian context in promoting not only of course reducing the demand for electricity, but at the same time gaining an enormous increase in the GDP, gross domestic product, economic activity of the country. But also, much more importantly, also in the reflectivity of the roofs, and they manage to reflect more of the sunlight back into the atmosphere. If you manage to do that, then you're going to reduce the total energy that's gained, total solar energy that's actually gets absorbed at the ground level, and therefore also decrease the overall temperatures in the cities. So this is an example, just show you some graphs and pictures. So this is a Walmart store in Northern California, the right side one. Believe it or not, the one next to it is also a hardware store. That is called a black roof. And we joke about it, but you can see that the number of customers, the many more cars that is sitting in front of the white roof than they are sitting in front of the black roof. Many degrees, most of the buildings are white. Many other countries do the same kinds of things. This is an example of Hyderabad city in India, where they are actually whitewashing the roof up on top. So if you look at this part here, this guy here is going around whitewashing all these roofs. And the goal really is to make sure that the temperature in the top floor of the building is kept low. Here's another example of this was not a good calculation. Simple observation suggests that most of the top floors of the buildings where the deaths happen had black roofs. And this is a problem. And the problem is that because of the black roofs, the temperature inside the top floor goes up a lot. With the temperature going up a lot, you're also going to be affected And if you have other problems, other medical problems taking place, then they could get worse. One-time calculation. So the total number that we have calculated globally comes to about 24 gigatons of equivalent CO2 reduction. And that translates into something like about 300 million cars off the road for about 20 years. So it's a very large number if everybody converted to white roofs. Not everybody, but those who have flat roofs, those who are located in certain areas, if they convert to white roofs, you can offset emissions that much. But you get a reduction somewhere between 15 to 20% reduction in air conditioning load once you put up a white roof, because the amount of solar energy that's coming through then declines, and the decline is substantial enough that you get a very large reduction in air conditioning loads. In the city of Delhi, the chief minister has agreed to make white roofs mandatory in government buildings, and some analysis is being done on that. And Dr. Mathur actually is working on it to help with the analysis that's being done. And we are actually beginning another program, which is to go for 100 cool cities throughout the world. And these are now being discussed across many countries, so that every city can then take advantage of this and begin to put together a program to reduce emissions.
Together and jointly tried to create a market for super efficient appliances, then those large numbers together would attract the attention of industry. It would make it worthwhile for them to develop, produce and sell these super efficient appliances, so that as a whole in the world we have a transformation which occurs much sooner than it would otherwise. So obviously, with the large amount of appliances that are there in the United States, with the large number of appliances that will be bought in India as the years go ahead, it made great sense for these two countries to see if we could harmonize our efforts. The program is called SEED, Super Efficient Appliance Deployment. That includes a number of countries apart from India and the US. And within India, the program is called SEEP, Super Efficient Equipment Program. Fuels, as we enhance the quality of lives, it becomes important that electricity and clean cooking fuels are made available. This implies an increase in the amount of energy used. That's a challenge. But it is also an opportunity, because since this would be used by people who will be buying energy using equipment for the first time, if we can influence the kind of purchases that they do, that they go in for efficient appliances to begin with, it implies that the curve in the future would be lower than what it would have been otherwise. And is the challenge of high first cost. Each one of us would very much like to purchase the most energy efficient device that exists in the market, but ultimately we make a choice based on efficiency, based on its price, obviously based on the features it has, the manufacturer who makes it, the color, the amount of widgets it has, all those kinds of stuff. So price and energy efficiency are two of the features which people typically trade off whenever they make a purchase anywhere in the world. Now, how do we address this? Therefore, as we look at influencing the path in the future, the technology choices become important. And these are some of the areas in which the technology choices will matter. There are a number of to buildings as well. And that's the second label that you see. It's very, very similar. The goal again is very clear, that when you and I go out to buy or rent office space, we use the label to see if we would like to go to rent or buy a more energy efficient building. So this is something which is already in place. It is in place for labels, and it has had a huge impact on the market. it's become a brand, and people, we introduced this as a voluntary label, and within a matter of 18 months, 75% of the refrigerators and 50% of the air conditioners that were sold were labeled. So people were buying more expensive labeled equipment, which is also more energy efficient, than cheaper equipment. This was important because it told the manufacturers that people were willing to pay more for more energy efficient appliances. This is an important issue. One which was sold in, say, 2006, 2007. So we are looking at a 50% decrease in energy consumption over this 10-year period. That's the baseline. Can we make it go faster? And this is where the super efficient equipment program comes in. Now, this clearly the super efficient appliance, and we are saying that rule of thumb, it is 50% better than the best available. And we would like it to come into the market sooner than it would otherwise. Well, it will be expensive. It will be more expensive than the 5-star products that are available today. And again, we have no idea how much people will buy. It's very clear there won't be very many buyers. And what do we want? We want large volumes. So we said, okay, we'll create another label, another logo for a super efficient equipment, and do a huge amount of public campaign and awareness about it, so that people know what it is. But the second thing we said was that we would provide an incentive, a financial incentive for each super efficient appliance that is sold in the market. A refrigerator, air conditioner, or a more mundane, and I'll talk about it in a moment, a ceiling fan. If a manufacturer produces a super efficient appliance which meets those standards and sells it, then that manufacturer would get an incentive. So that is how the program would work. What benefit? So we said, okay, share this benefit, and therefore this incentive that is paid out to the manufacturer is recovered through the distribution companies where these are being sold. So that's how the program would work. What is the kind of impact? For a variety of equipment and appliances, the numbers are here. Remember that 50% of households have access to electricity, and as over the next 4 years, 5 years, all the households have access to electricity, what is the first thing that they buy? The first thing that they buy is a bulb, an incandescent bulb. And therefore, moving people from incandescent bulbs to CFLs and then on to LEDs is an important part. The second thing that they buy is a fan, a ceiling fan. So what we are doing is, within India, focusing on using this program to see how we can push for a fan which is much more efficient, a super efficient fan. As I said, the way it would work,
the key driver for the LBNL work in India is the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed among 4 parties in 2007. The 3 parties from the US were the California Energy Commission, the California Public Utilities Commission, and Lawrence Berkeley Labs. And the 1 party from India was the Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is analogous to the California private-owned utilities in India. So the challenges are much different. But the regulatory structure, that's more or less the same. These are just 4 examples of the recent research that LBNL has been doing in this field. The research has spanned a lot of other topics that I mentioned in the scope of work also. But recently we did a major analysis, and Jayant was just presenting the results about, and there have been other studies that have been going on for looking at renewable energy potential and what are the cost effectiveness of those. We'll use an inefficient version of that and a DSM program that can make people aware and also provide them incentives to reduce upfront cost can have big benefits. It almost reduced the consumption in half. So that's one program that is being rolled out. Air conditioners, again, these programs will be piggybacking on the technical work that Bureau of Energy Efficiency does, including the labeling and branding. So this program is again targeted to the 5-star rated appliances. Ceiling fans that I mentioned. Utility is trying to implement this program where they're trying to use ice that can be cooled at night, and that can be used for supporting the air conditioning equipment the next day afternoon. As I described earlier, LBNL has been providing technical assistance at pretty much every single stage of the efficiency and the work that the utilities especially are doing. And this is just one of the programs that I was talking about, the roofs and tube lights. Close to 40 years of energy efficiency work in the US. We still have maybe about 12 or 15 states out of 50 who are implementing some substantial energy efficiency programs. It is quite slow to go state by state, utility by utility to try and achieve the same kind of outcomes that you're looking for. India has almost 30 states, and there are probably about 50 or 60 utilities. It is going to be very slow if we start, trying to go from the ground up, build up capacity, build up understanding, develop these cases by each utility. So we are looking for some faster solutions.
Producers of electricity from wind turbines. I think it runs at 10,000 megawatts plus 14,000 megawatts now. And it ranks very highly, and they have been doing this through a government program which provided incentives to manufacturers so they can begin to install. And typically you get much higher wind speeds in the temperate regions than you get in a country like India. So the US and China, you have much higher wind speeds than what you would have in India. And that's something that the wind turbine manufacturers would have to deal with and figure out as to how to tackle that.
So if I can
Would you like to?
The cost of producing a kilowatt hour from wind energy is higher than it is in other countries. And given the relative limited ability of people to pay for electricity, there is also an issue of how much wind and other renewable energy can one add to the grid. So while each regulator is telling its distribution companies you have to get 5%, 6%, 7%, 10% of electricity from renewables, there is a kind of a upper limit which is driven by how much is it that the consumers would be willing to pay in terms of additional costs of renewables.
Various kinds of vegetation up on top of the roof. And there are 2 or 3 issues. One is the white roofs are a lot cheaper for obvious reasons. There is not much to be done except to paint the roof white once and make sure that it stays white in the future. And green roofs, of course, takes much more maintenance and a higher cost associated with it. The second part has to do with well, there is a difference. In the white roof's case, you are looking at the reflectivity of the roof. So if you painted the roof green, you wouldn't get the same thing. But the advantage here in the green roof is with the vegetation is that you're actually capturing CO2, and that does get counted, should be counted. But that's really the key issue, is what's the maintenance that's required and how much is the cost of doing something like this. But at the end of the day, what we have seen is that for a given roof, the white roof seems to be reflecting much more than what you would get from the green roof.
Would either of our other panelists like to comment on the roofs?
Well, I'll just agree with what Jayant is saying. At the end of the day, it is a choice. Green roofs do have an impact, but ultimately it depends on many things. Is there somebody who's willing to manage it? What is the basic civil work that has been done? Because if you have a green roof, there is obviously a lot more water seepage possibilities from the top. And ultimately the issues of maintenance. But green roof is as attractive for managing the heat and the albedo effect as are white roofs. whether you buy electricity, you're paying something, or whether you're investing in energy efficiency. On both of these, we are giving you a regular, when you're buying electricity and selling it, you're getting a regulated rate of return. What we will do is, when you invest in energy efficiency as demand side management, we will give you the same rate of return on those investments as well. So as far as you are concerned, you as the utility earn money whether you buy electricity or whether you invest money in demand side management. This is very new. Whether it would lead utilities to radically change the way in which they look at their business, I don't know. But that's one positive step forward.
That we have is mostly private utility companies, and in India it's exactly the opposite. Virtually all the utility companies are public utility companies, state-run. And so while decoupling is a very important issue, perhaps it's more important for private companies than it's for public utility companies. And there is a difference. So there is basically in most cases, the difference in cost, at the end of the year, there is truism, and sort of work it out and allow the additional cost to be covered. And if it's a public utility company, you're not looking for profits there. So there is a difference in terms of what the attitudes are. Now there are other reasons why public utility companies don't want to do it. Okay, but not so much to do with the decoupling issues.
So I found myself.
When the vast amount of infrastructure that will ultimately be needed would have been built, energy efficiency would have contributed about 50% of the job in reducing the emissions from where they would have been otherwise to taking them to zero.
I'd like to add, the topic of market transformation is especially important because of the high growth rates. In the US, the real concern for energy efficiency program designers is retrofits. That how do I convince the customer to remove the old inefficient appliance and put in a new efficient appliance? In India, it's going to be the first time purchases, and you want to make sure that the first time purchases are the most efficient as possible, because you're going to lock in these savings for the entire lifetime of that appliance. And that goes for television sets or refrigerators or air conditioners, which are going to be there for 10 years, 15 years in the Indian context. But right now, the market penetration of these appliances is probably barely into the double digits.